Three, two, one, and we're live. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Village Made Podcast. My name is Mavel Heimuli. Today we have a special guest with us. It's just been a pleasure because we both grew up together. You know, just a couple houses down from me, and just to watch, you know, the person that you've grown into, and just following you on social media and everything that you're into now. I know that you're a businessman and an entrepreneur. So now today's special guest is Misi Livai. Thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing everything with what you have to share with us. That's what we're trying to do here on the Village Made Podcast, is just to provide, something that these people, everyone that's listening, provide them good content and provide them whatever you have to offer, so thanks.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Let's just get into this. Is it true that you haven't had a job in your life?
Yes. I mean, I know that sounds like I'm a loser, but I've never had a W-2 in my life. I've either worked for myself or for one of my companies.
Got it. So because you mentioned you've never had a job, what do you do now for a living?
Right now, I buy and sell stocks, I buy and sell homes, and I build and sell businesses. I really like business. Over these past few years, we've created about a dozen businesses and have had collectively about 100 employees, and has made millions over the years. And so that's kind of my passion, So I buy and sell stocks, I buy and sell homes, and I build and sell businesses.
So with what you mentioned, could you walk us through some of those business experiences that you've had?
Well, one company we made was a credit repair company. We wanted to restore people's credit. As a loan officer at the time, I was able to kind of talk with some clients. They had sufficient money for their home, but they just didn't have high enough credit. So I teamed up with this law firm in Colorado that specialized in cleaning people's credit scores and raising them. And so that was one company that we made. It was called Extra Credit LLC, and that was fun. We also had an emergency shelter where there was a need in the state of Hawaii for at-risk youth. They had run out of space in the emergency shelter. So we opened two facilities, and they were staffed 24/7. One was for females and one was for males. And it was cool because we were able to become Hawaii's largest emergency shelter in both funding and bed capacity. We opened a restaurant. That was fun. The shelter, they had funds that we could, take the kids out to eat and whatnot. And so instead of giving it over to McDonald's or Domino's, we wanted to kind of keep it in-house. So we opened a restaurant. The restaurant was called Levi's Kitchen. It was right across Kahuku High School. And so it was built so that we could kind of keep the money internally. The high school came, and, we weren't prepared for that rush. And it was good because we were able to sell that restaurant to Tita's Grill, which is one of the best food establishments in the entire state of Hawaii. We also had a music company that we created where it was called My Lyrics, where we would gather all of the local musicians, and we would make customized songs for any occasion, for weddings, anniversaries, whatever. And that was a fun business venture that we had. I created a scooter company where we rented scooters or electric mobility chairs for people at the Polynesian Cultural Center. PCC is like 42 acres, and so some people just can't walk that far. So we were able to win the BYU business competition and start that company there, and rent them out to anybody who was, who didn't want or could not walk the 42 acres at PCC. We also had a stock trading company, and what we did was Gina and I went and purchased every program out there, every course, every stock trading course that we could get. We tested their methods and their strategies. We kept what worked and threw away what didn't, and then we kind of compiled what did work and used that as our course that we taught our students. And it was called Safe Trading, which stood for Stocks and Financial Education. So that was cool to be able to take these students who have never traded in the stock market, and some of them to be able to see them 5 times to 7 times their portfolio in a short amount of time. And then we had our real estate where we would invest, Levi estates, we would buy homes and build them and be able to sell them later. So those were some of the business ventures that we had, and they were all great and gave us so many learning experiences.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of businesses that you've started and that you got into. Maybe I can ask you about a few of them, and then you can go into further detail about them. Mm-hmm. Can you go into further detail about your scooter company?
Sure. So Scooterville, in 2012, we entered the BYU business competition. So every year they had this competition called Empower Your Dreams. I'm not sure what it's called now, but this is where hundreds of people submit their business plans and we compete, and there's these very successful business people that come and judge and select a winner. So in 2012, we won that with Scooterville. And the way that when it was time to present my business plan for that year, I was trying to find something that would, potentially win it. And I knew that if I wanted to start a business, I would first try to identify a problem and solve it. And if I can do so, that'd be great. So I went to PCC. And I was trying to, because PCC is, Hawaii's number one paid attraction, and they have 1 million people walking through their doors every year. So I thought if I could find a problem there that I could solve, then it'd be a successful business. So I went there and sat for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And then I heard this lady was screaming at one of the workers, and she was so upset. She was saying, "What do you mean you don't have mobility chairs? Disneyland has them. Am I supposed to walk this huge park?" And so when I identified that problem, I went home. Within the hour, I had my business plan, right? So I submitted my business plan to the BYU competition, and we won. The winnings were $5,000. It was $5,000. So I took it and I bought 5 scooters. They were about $1,000 each. And our motto was, basically our rule of thumb was that every 3 days that we would sell out, we would buy another scooter because the demand required it. So we grew our fleet from 5 scooters to the most we've ever had at one time was 22 scooters. And it was cool. We're renting them out at $50 a pop. So to be in the June, July months when we'd sell out the 22 scooters, that was a huge financial blessing. But that's kind of how it happened. We wanted to submit a plan for the business competition. So in order to do so, I had to identify a problem that I could solve and hopefully monetize. Went to PCC, found a problem, solved it, pulled the trigger, and then that was the beginning of that. And so when we came here, we decided to sell it, and it was cool because we sold it for just under $250,000. So that was a very big financial blessing for us to come here and start stretching our legs here in this new state of Utah, where we're so happy to be.
So yeah, I remember going to PCC and seeing those, your electric scooters there. So that's cool that I know the business owner. Can you get into a little more of your dealings in real estate?
Yeah. So the funny thing was, while we were kind of creating all these businesses, the thing that we kind of didn't even put a second thought to was our real estate. We're just buying the homes and setting them up the way that we wanted and just living in them. I didn't do anything special to them. I didn't, accelerate payments or try to minimize whatever, principal that I owe. Nothing. I just kind of paid for it and lived in it. And while I'm so busy trying to establish all these other businesses, it was cool to see what real estate could do. So when it was time to move, that first house we bought in 2010, when we sold it in 2020, right? Again, paying no mind to it, we owed $350,000 on the home. We sold the home for $855,000. So we were able to cash out over $500,000. And I'm thinking to myself, this is something that we've neglected over the whole decade. We didn't do anything special to it, but it brought over $500,000. And so that kind of opened my eyes to the power of real estate. So we sold our second family home, and we sold that for about $840,000. And we're like, okay, we're going to start looking more deeply into real estate because it's the power of the equity and appreciation and all that stuff. It's just, it was amazing to see that. And again, we had so much focus and so much effort placed on all these different businesses that we've had. And, the thing that really we weren't paying attention to brought in essentially more than what we could have made in those 10 years. So that was a pretty cool thing. So after, selling the homes there and buying and building our dream home here, we decided to become realtors because not only are we pretty good at it and we've been dealing with our own real estate holdings for so long, but we did see that it would be cool to save, costs on the homes that we acquire here, and at the same time be able to help our friends and family buy and sell their homes. So that's kind of how we transitioned from our real estate in Hawaii to being realtors here in Utah.
So what is one of the most important things you've learned in business?
There's a lot of things you learn. I think the most important one was my relationship with money. And I'd like to share what I call Levi economics. It's the way that our family does business, right? And that is that we convert money into time. And the reason is because money it's replenishable. I can spend all my money today, go out tomorrow and make money. But time is finite. There's a very limited amount. All the money in the world can't buy yesterday, right? And so when we try to, in our attempt to convert money into time, we are giving it greater value. Yeah. And so my daughter, she's 8 years old, right? I pay her $5 a day for her chores. She has her chores that she does as her contribution to her family, but other things like reading to my son or coloring with my daughter, she gets paid $5 a day. Now, when she wants something, she doesn't ask how much it costs. She asks how many days of work does it cost. So if it's $20, I would tell her 4 days of work. And then she starts to think about it and say, is it worth 4 days? Yeah. And that's what I want, because when she grows up, if she gets paid $10 an hour, she wants a $50 purse, she's going to think, okay, is my purse worth 5 hours? Is it worth a shift and all that? And that way there's greater value behind her decision process of what she buys. Yeah. And for adults, for my wife and I, the way that we do it, it's pretty cool. I think it's cool. So the issue that we see with most adults is that when we need money, we give up our time. We go to work, we do overtime, all that stuff. But when we get money, we buy things, right? So there's three partners in here. There's time, money, and things. Money and things are both replaceable or replenishable, and time isn't. So in this partnership, time is the one that's being robbed. The most valuable of the three is being robbed, right? We need money, we give up time. We get money, we buy things. So in order for us to flip that in our family, in our Levi economics, when we need money, we give up time. When we get money, we buy time. Now, how do you buy time? The way we do it is we have a freedom number. My wife and I have a spreadsheet, and we know our dollar amount that we need for our family to live absolutely comfortable for the entire year. And that's about $100,000. Now, that includes our, all of our bills. That includes, vacation. That includes insurances, all that, right? And so the way that we make it work is that when I get money, I buy time by allocating those funds or that money to where it's supposed to go, right? So this past month was a good month for us. Between my trading and my real estate transactions, I was able to bring in about $50,000. Now, I don't report to Jean that I made $50K. I tell her I made 6 months, yeah? So that means that for the next 6 months, if I chose to, I could do nothing and my family would be taken care of. I'd have freedom, right? I can wake up at 10 a.m., eat cereal, watch TV with my kids, take a nap, go to the playground, do whatever I want. That's complete freedom for 6 months. I won't do that I won't do nothing for 6 months, of course, but I have that freedom, right? Now, the thing is, in order for this to work, when I do get funds, it has to be pre-allocated to where it's supposed to go, to that Excel sheet. I can't go and blow it on, I could easily go to Best Buy and buy all these different things and whatnot, but the money is pre-allocated to where it has to be so that I have time. I have freedom of time, right? And so that's how we do it. In our bank account, usually we speak in time. I don't know how much dollars I have. I have 12 years. That's what I know, And so the cool thing about when you have time in your account, right? Most people think that when you're going to become financially free for life, they usually think it's in one transaction. Now, unless you win the lottery, that's not going to happen, right? You build it incrementally. When we sold Scooterville, and we got just under $250,000, I thought, okay, what we got here was a little over 2 years, And so if we came to if we came from Hawaii to Utah and did nothing for 2 years and 2 months or whatever, we'd be completely fine. But again, we don't. We won't just be lazy, and then we just add to that pool so that eventually we'll have more time stored up. The goal is to have more time in our account than the number of years we have left in life, and then we can transition that to our kids. And then our kids, their freedom number should be lower, and then the income that they have. And so that way they can start stacking up time to be free, right? So that's kind of the concept that we have of buying time, right? When we need money, we go give up of our time. When we get money, we put it to where it's supposed to be so that time can be bought back, and then we're free.
So now that you've found success, what are some things that you are doing to help set up your kids for future success?
So I would ask this question. If you knew who was going to win the Super Bowl, how much money would you put on it? And the answer is usually all of it. And so although I don't know who's going to win the Super Bowl, I do know one thing for sure, and that is that I will pass away one day. And so when I was younger, at about 24 years old, I bought whole life insurance. And it's $1 million policy. And I bought it because I knew that I wanted to be able to take care of my kids in the event that I pass, right? Now I have a whole life insurance. I have term insurance. Every time we bought a home, I would buy another 30-year term just to make sure that it could cover the house in the event that I pass away before the mortgage is paid. But the whole life insurance, it was my guaranteed ticket. I'm guaranteeing that my family will win the $1 million lottery when I pass. And if you just do the calculation, right? So right now I think it's about $200 a month for my whole life policy. That's $2,400 a year. That's 24 grand a decade. I'm going to live about 5 decades more if I'm lucky, And so that's an investment of about $120,000. So from this point on, $120,000 will guarantee that my family will get $1 million tax-free. So what I've done is, and not everybody can do this, is I just took the $120K and put it in another account, and then it's just on auto deduction for my premiums. So that's how I guaranteed that my kids will be taken care of after I go. And it's cool that I could still look after them financially from the grave after I have passed. So that's how I set my kids up for success in the future. And on top of that, I bought them each their own whole life insurance term policies when they were like 6 months old. So it's very, very cheap. So when they grow up and get married, they don't have to pay as much for their insurance to make sure that their kids are going to be taken care of. So that's a pretty cool. So I chip away at their freedom number of their required funds for their year because I started things early for them that it's going to be cheaper.
So now you've got us excited. The listeners, I want to start a business. Where do we start?
The first thing I would do is identify a problem and try to solve it, right? And the reason for that is because if you can solve a problem, then you don't have to market yourself. You don't have to look for clients. They're already looking for you. So it's kind of like low-hanging fruit, yeah? So if I was to start a business today, that's where I would look. I would look for a problem that I could potentially solve and monetize it. And the cool thing about that is that if you solve a problem, there's going to be very few hurdles from here to opening up a successful business.
Okay, so now that we're excited to start this business, there might be that fear, right, that creeps in. So for those of us who are a little scared to start a business, what would you recommend?
Well, I recommend just doing it. Get out there and do it. You will never be ready enough. You will never be prepared enough. I have friends that read tons of books and watch hours of video in trying to prepare before they pull the trigger. Now, you'll never go to a gas station and hear someone say, put $1,000 on pump number 4. And the reason is because there's no gas tank big enough to hold that much gas. You put $40, you drive and experience something. You see something, you go somewhere, you do something. And then you come back, you put another $40 in and do the same thing, right? So eventually you will use $1,000, but you're learning as you go. You're experiencing as you go. And that's the same way for business. Just jump in and do it. Learn a little bit, get your basics down, pull the trigger, do something. 2 things are going to happen. Either you will succeed or you will learn. Either way, it's a win, right? So for every one company that I have that succeeded, I probably had 3 that failed. Now, they weren't wasted because in those failures, I've learned certain things that helped to attribute to the successful business that came later. So again, I either won or I learned. So either way, just do it. Get out there, do it. Don't be scared. Just pull the trigger.
So now that we're wanting to start a business, how do we get the money to start?
One of the things I tell people to do is to go on their online banking and put on a daily transfer of $27.40 every day to go from their checking account to their savings account. Some banks don't allow you to do it daily, so just calculate the weekly and do the weekly amount. But if you can transfer $27.40 every day from your checking to your saving, it will require small sacrifices on a daily basis. You might have to bring a sandwich for lunch instead of going out to a restaurant. You might have to carpool to save gas money. But these small sacrifices on a daily basis will pay big at the end, because if you do that amount, after 1 year, your savings account will have $10,000 that you can do with what you see fit, business or whatever. And the cool thing about it is I gave this tip on my Facebook not too long ago, and it was cool to get messages from so many people saying, I've never saved so much money before. And the reason is because when it got hard for them to make those daily sacrifices, it was easier to swallow the sacrifice because they knew they weren't losing it. It was just being moved from this account to this account. So it was easier for them to make the sacrifices they were doing because they knew it was for themselves. And so it's cool. So we're, a few months in, but there's many people out there now that I see that are on their way to having a $10,000, capital needed for business or whatever they see fit.
So what are some tools you've used to become successful?
You might laugh, but one of the things is vision boards, and so my wife she's always loved vision boards, and I used to tease her about it. But over the years, I've seen her crush every goal or every vision that she had placed on her vision boards. For example, she wanted to open a restaurant. She put it on her vision board. A few months later, we did. She wanted to live at Turtle Bay next to the golf course, the tennis courts, and the pools. She put it on her vision board. Months later, we did. She wanted to buy a home in a cul-de-sac with a gym in the back. She put on her vision board. Months later, we got it. She wanted a beach house. She put this big, picture of the beach house and everything. And a few months later, we were in a beach house. And the cool thing about that part, that vision board, is that the actual beach she put on her vision board was the beach in our backyard. And it also happened to be the one that I grew up in, because when I was 5 years old, we used to live 2 houses down from where we were at that moment. So that was so cool. And her most recent one in 2020, the beginning of 2020, she printed out our bank statements on deposits. She whited out the number and she put $1 million on there. And when I saw it, I thought it was cute. I thought it was, probably unobtainable in 1 year, but she put it in there. And, we were 13 days late, but on January 13, 2021, we had accomplished it and had deposited over $1 million into our account. And so, I used to tease her on her vision boards, but it has been an amazing tool for us to get to where we're at. And so now, instead of teasing her, I sharpen her colored pencils and I make sure her glue stick is ready to go.
So with all this great information, what's the next thing to do?
What I would recommend after this video is creating a business plan and writing it down, not just thinking about it, creating a business plan that you can put on paper and then presenting it to somebody that you care and trust and getting their feedback, getting their critique. Yeah. My family and we used to meet every week in Hawaii, and every family member had a business plan and they would present it to the family and we would try our best to shut it down. And it's not because we were being mean or punks. It was because if it could survive our critique, then it was worth your money and your time in pursuing. And even if it didn't survive, you could still pursue it, but at least you're aware of the roadblocks and the hurdles that may lay ahead. And so the cool thing about that concept, and that's why I'm asking you to do it, is because when you prepare to present, you will be more alert and attentive to the details. You'll do your due diligence. You'll find out facts that you need to build in order to see if it works or not. And then when you present it, you'll be open to feedback, you get it, and then you can adapt and then pull the trigger. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, after this, create a business plan, prepare it, present it to somebody you love, get feedback, and then pull the trigger.
All right, man. So thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Village Made podcast. Man, Misi, I'm just grateful for, I feel like there's a lot of value that you've added into our lives, for everyone that's listening, for everyone that's here. So again, thank you for your time. I know, a lot of people, like I said, been reaching out to you, trying to pick your mind and trying to, get things from you. So for you to share it on the podcast, I do appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, again, what I need you to do now is also subscribe to our channel. Go ahead and check out thevillagehi.com. Make sure to get your merch there as well. And again, it takes a village to raise a child.